We're going to call to order the Finance Committee for November the 21st, 2017. Item number 1, please.
Consider approval of Finance Committee minutes of November 7th, 2017.
Reviewing the minutes, are there any corrections or additions?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we approve the minutes. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 1 passed. Item number 2.
Consider approval of claims for all city departments November 1, 2017 through November 15, 2017.
Do we have a report from the Purchasing Committee?
Yes, sir. The purchasing committee met earlier today and reviewed the report of claims with the city treasurer, and I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 2 passed. Item number 3, please.
Consider approval to accept the lowest and best bids from Simpson Carpentry in the amount of $7,700 to repair the dwelling located at 1414 Tamaroa Street, and Tom Crabtree in the amount of $10,475 to repair the dwelling located at 1506 North 16th Street, for a total of $18,175 to repair 2 dwellings through the Muskogee Rehabilitation and Revitalization Program, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a continuation of our housing program. As you know, the housing program is funded through a grant from the City of Muskogee Foundation. Previous year, we received approximately $300,000 for this program. This year, we only received $100,000. With the $100,000, we thought we could repair 5 structures. So a couple months ago, we went out for bid to repair the 5 structures. Due to the low bids we received on those 5 structures, we have enough funding to do 2 additional structures. So we went out for bid for those 2 structures. We are recommending low bid on both structures. One to Simpson Carpentry in the amount of $7,700, and the other to Tom Crabtree in the amount of $10,475. We are recommending approval. Purchasing Committee just met earlier and recommended approval. Be glad to answer any questions.
Move the approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
You may be recognized, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Garvin, how many more houses do we have in Section 8?
We've got several more houses, probably 15 to 18, so we'll go through another grand cycle before we get out of Area 8, depending on the funding.
Okay. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Garvin, are we prepared to make an ask during the next cycle that will possibly bring our numbers back up financially?
Yes, every year in February we put in a request, and
Okay.
our request is always at least $300,000.
Okay, because I'm always concerned that the foundation is appreciative of the hard work, not only that you guys do to facilitate the program, but the benefit that goes to the residents. Because when we live in an impoverished area like we do in Muskogee, that makes a huge difference when we can be fully funded versus being funded at the level we're at now.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 3 passed. That is the final item for the Finance Committee.
And we'll call to order the Public Works Committee meeting. Item number 1.
Consider approval of Public Works Committee minutes of November 7th, 2017.
Any additions or corrections?
Move the approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 2.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of Ordinance 4033A, rezoning the property located at 3123 Gibson Street, more particularly described in the ordinance, from C2 General Commercial District to R1 Single Family Residential, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the official zoning map of the city to reflect said change or take other necessary action.
We're now in a public hearing. Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant, Anthony Cox, is requesting approval to downzone property from the C2 General Commercial District to the R1 Single Family Residential District. Property is located at 3123 Gibson Street. The reason for rezoning is to allow a new single-family dwelling to be built on the property. If you'll remember at our last meeting, we approved a one-lot subdivision on approximately 4.3 acres for Janie's addition. This is that same piece of property. However, about an acre of this property was zoned C2 general commercial. Evidently spot zoned many, many years ago. So this is down zoning it, getting it to what zoning it should be to start with. Looking at the site, currently the site is zoned C2 and is undeveloped property. North, which is across Gibson Street, is zoned R1 single family, and there's a single family dwelling. South is zoned A agricultural and is undeveloped property. East is also zoned A agricultural and undeveloped. And west is zoned R1 single family, and there's a couple of single family dwellings on the west side. If you look at the land use map, it does indicate single family residential within this area. Therefore, this request complies with the comprehensive plan and land use map adopted by the City of Muskogee. Both staff and planning commissions recommended approval. Be glad to answer any questions.
Seeing that no one signed up to speak to this issue, we're going to close the public hearing. Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 3.
Consider approval of ordinance number 4034A, repealing Article 16, hospitals and ambulatory surgical care facilities, including sections 22-674 through 22-675, all contained within Chapter 22, Business Regulations of the City of Muskogee Code of Ordinances, and reserving said section and article numbers for future use or take other necessary action.
Mr. Tucker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, at our last council meeting, staff was directed to bring forth an ordinance which would repeal the existing hospital and ambulatory care ordinance as it sits on the books. That ordinance, last amended in 2005, would require that for any new hospital or ambulatory care center built or expanded, a permit filed with the city clerk in the amount of $10,000 and the possibility of a feasibility study to determine the impact on a new or expanded hospital or ambulatory care service in Muskogee prior to issuance of the permit. During some discussion with the council, it was determined that that was probably something that needed to go away because that it potentially hindered or had the option to hinder development within the area. As you all may also remember, Councilor Kale asked for us to put together some rationale for why that ordinance was originally created. And so I pulled a copy of the 2005 amendment and have prepared a memorandum that I have distributed to all of you via email and provided you a hard copy today, which articulates some of the reasoning for the ordinance back in 2005, namely that the council at that time found that there was a need to investigate possible impacts on new and expanded medical care for hospitals and ambulatory care services, and that the unregulated and unfettered growth of these type facilities could have a potentially negative impact on the health care within Muskogee. In having some conversations with Muskogee Medical Center Executive Director Jim Blair, back in 2005 when this amendment was last proposed, hospitals were being expanded and built all over the state. So there was a real fear at that time that the market could be oversaturated. And when you have multiple hospitals providing the same level of service, you're not going to bring more people in. You're going to be dividing the same people who are needing the care. And so you have the potential that where one might succeed, multiple ones, because of the division of patients, may cause all to fail. And so there was that concern back in 2005, and that's when this was passed. As time has passed, we noticed that the medical expansion has somewhat stabilized, and so that fear is no longer something that, at least in Mr. Blair's perspective, is something to be concerned about. And additionally, since in the 12 years since the ordinance was last amended, we can only, Mr. Garvin and I could only find one instance where this ordinance potentially had a negative impact, and that was with the development of the Physicians Hospital over on North Main Street. Originally, and Gary, correct me if I say something wrong here, that was planned, or discussions were had, that facility be built within the city limits. But due to the fact that we had this ordinance on the book that required the possibility of a feasibility study, a hefty deposit, the developers of that hospital went ahead and found a site that was located outside of the city limits. Beyond that, there have probably been 5 to 7 individuals who've called with concerns about the ordinance for the development of a particular type of healthcare business. Imaging was one that I can remember, as well as there was I think a pain management center that was also developed. Now, those did not impact the ordinance because they did not meet the definition of a hospital, which requires overnight stays, or an ambulatory surgical care center, which requires 24/7 on-call physician. None of them had that kind of service. They were all check in, check out. They closed up shop at 5 o'clock. So there really hasn't been a number of contacts with us for people concerned about that. But we also don't know how many people have decided not to even ask, recognizing that we are one of several other cities who have these hefty permitting requirements. As you all remember, when we were originally discussing this, I presented a sheet for you all related to the number of communities in the city that had restrictive ordinances on healthcare expansions or new development. And most of the larger cities did not. But some of the communities that were our size did. Their deposit was about $75,000. So ours was much cheaper than that. But the wisdom was, we want Muskogee to grow, so any impediments that we can remove, let's go ahead and do that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. But if passed, the ordinance will repeal all of those requirements and permitting modifications that are included, and so the only thing that would impair the location of a hospital is the zoning requirements that have to be in a place that the zoning is appropriate for that construction of a hospital. One other thing to consider is that removing this ordinance would also allow for the St. Francis Hospital to do whatever expansions for its capital improvement plan that it's been currently working on without any hindrance from the city or from this ordinance. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Coleman, who I believe had some comments he wanted to make on this ordinance as well.
I think, Mr. Tucker, you said everything in an articulate way. My motivation when I wanted this first to be considered was for us to always be in mind, to keep in mind rather, that anything we can do to enhance our ability to attract technical jobs would always be helpful. With the evolution of the Affordable Care Act, most hospitals will tell you that on any good night they are filled to capacity, and that they need more bed space for the patients that they're trying to account for. And I think that this puts us in a good situation as a city to be able to at least not have a hindrance there should anyone consider to come to Muskogee for additional medical opportunities. And I move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 4.
Consider approval of resolution number 2709 to participate in a project with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation to replace the traffic signal at US 62 Shawnee Bypass and Country Club Road, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee, this is a resolution to join with the Highway Department in replacing the traffic signal and doing road work at Shawnee and Country Club. ODOT has agreed and budgeted for 80% of the actual signal cost. We will be responsible for the roadway cost, right-of-way, and utility relocation costs. But with their participation, this becomes a good project, and it's a good time to take advantage of the funding they're going to provide. And we recommend approval.
So will that island still be on North Country Club?
The island will be there. The left turn lanes are going to be lengthened to the proper length so that cars can get through. Taking the island out causes other issues because you're so close to the intersection. It's a safety issue.
Okay, I'll just.
From the north and south, both?
Yes,
The island will remain both sides.
yes, but the left turn lanes will be lengthened too, so the storage is there for cars that are turning left, and protected left turn signals for the left
From
turn.
from the south going north, at that, I'm trying to think, if there's more than like two cars queued up.
Right. That's
then
the problem there
people
now.
trying to turn behind can't.
So we're widening it further back
access
so
them.
that more
Okay,
cars
all right.
can get in that left turn
All right.
lane. Yes. And working on the drainage on the south side so that the flooding issue there is solved too.
The 12-inch water or the?
Any other questions?
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 5.
Receive annual report on industrial pretreatment program performance summary and take any necessary action.
Mr. Riley, I see you got this one, or?
Abby Wright's going to present this.
Hello.
Y'all couldn't get Ron to come today?
Abby is
Abby's
a
I
new,
told him
I was coming. That was an invite, right?
Since you become a radio personality, they wanted to expand your responsibility.
There you go.
Abby is a new environmental technician, and Ron is over the pollution control plant now.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Okay. The City of Muskogee is required by our the Federal Water Pollution Control Act to establish and implement a pretreatment program. I'm here today to present a review of our pretreatment year and inform you of any violations that occurred and what was done to correct these violations. So some basic information with the I included with your documents with the agenda item pretreatment performance summary. So we had 13 significant industrial users this year. It was one up from last year. We had 5 permits issued. 3 were just renewals. It's kind of per course. We had 1 new permit and then an updated permit for a name change, and 2 permits that were closed. We had 4 notice of violations issued. 2 of those were for significant violations, and so I'm just going to focus on those. The significant violations were Proform Group. They exceeded their limit for zinc in the second pretreatment year, or second quarter of the pretreatment year. And they were required to collect 3 resamples, and those were in compliance. So they're currently in compliance, but based on EPA definitions, they're in significant noncompliance for the year, and they will be published in the paper. Also, Muskogee Waste and Water will be published in the paper. They had an illicit discharge of untreated industrial wastewater to the sanitary sewer system through an unauthorized outfalls. Basically, they were discharging through an unpermitted outfall. And I sent a notice to them to seal up that line that they were discharging to, and they did, but they closed right after this. And I did a final inspection on August 14th, 2017, and also their permits terminated, but they'll be the public notice will be posted in the paper reflecting as such. And I have copies of the public notice if you'd like it, and that's all.
Any questions for Ms. Wright?
I'm assuming that after you've done the review, like you've already done, that proactive measures are put in place as best as you can, at least, to be certain that that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, well, they had it was a sump pump that had a drain line, and the plug had gotten unplugged.
Okay.
And so that was what was causing it. And I had they concreted the line. And it was kind of hard because it was like horizontal, so they had to like put concrete in there, put the plug over. So, but they're no longer, he's not working there anymore. It was like a one-man operation, and he's no longer working there. And I sent them they're not allowed to discharge because I sent their closure letter of their permit.
Thank you. Any other questions? No action is necessary on this report. Item number 6. Thank you, Abby.
Consider approval of an agreement with Garver LLC for professional services for the Terminal Apron Handstand Construction Project number 170-31561 at the Muskogee Davis Regional Airport, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Safell.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Committee. This agreement for professional services with Garver will provide grant administration, bidding, and construction services for the Muskogee Davis Regional Airport Terminal Apron Hard Stand Construction Project. This hard stand will consist of a 175-foot by 50-foot concrete parking area that can accommodate at least three small, 2 mid-size, or 1 large jet. This hard stand will be put in place to minimize damage from heavy aircraft on our newly rehabilitated terminal apron, and it will provide a premium, concrete, nice parking area for our corporate and business customers right in front of the terminal building. Our current apron, it's been in place since 1943. The apron, Taxiway Bravo and Runway 1331 project that's currently in process is redoing that apron. And what this terminal apron hard stand will do is it will prevent any future damage, major damage to this apron, newly rehabilitated apron by these large jets. Anytime a Learjet or a Citation sits on our apron, it's asphalt. It actually, if it's there for more than 12 or 24 hours, it sinks into it. And then when the aircraft moves, it reflects and it bounces back and it cracks. Also, the concrete prevents any minor leaks from fuel or oil, which happens frequently, from damaging the asphalt. These have been done by the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission at several airports of our capacity within the state successfully. This project will be funded with a state grant from the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. 95% will be covered by the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. The remaining $2,250 will be funded using airport funds. Total cost of the design project is $45,000. That's been negotiated down from the original $58,000 cost. We plan to go to bid with the actual project after we get approval, and once the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission signs off on the bids, then we will move forward with construction when they approve the grant. I recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
That motion carries. Item number 7.
Discuss and provide necessary direction to staff to prepare a plan to solicit a state fair or similar type of event to the city.
Mr. Coleman.
I have been giving a lot of thought to the energy and excitement that a lot of Muskogee people have when it comes to attending Tulsa's State Fair. And I thought to myself that a people's fullest potential is not really met until we are forced to stretch beyond the limitations of our own imagination. And having said that, I really want us to try to think big in terms of what we might be able to do to not mimic that fair verbatim, but to maybe think about what we can do to do something similar, to give our residents something that they deserve. People in Muskogee are always hawking on wanting us to be a place where we can live, work, and play. And I think something like a state fair will lead us into a direction where we may not hit it 100%, but we could at least come close. And so all I want us to be able to do is give staff direction to be able to start the investigation process to determine what might be done for us to be able to explore that option, and then let us know the components that it might take for it to actually be done. Of course, there's going to be a cost and partnerships that need to be forged and anticipated, but I think at least we need to know what they are so that we can consider what we need to do to go forward, and at least looking at the possibility to having a state fair here in Muskogee. And I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if that needs a motion, but I just want to direct staff to at least look into it.
Okay. Mr. Tucker?
Staff can be directed without a motion on this if there's a consensus.
I would sure like to see us consider that at Hatbox.
Okay.
I don't know if you said Hatbox in there, but
I don't have a
from
preference.
a
as long
facility
as-
standpoint,
Yeah.
and I think there's already been some conversations
Sure.
Right.
in that direction. I don't know whether you remember or not, but we have a Fair Board expert in our midst on our council who was unopposed.
And we'll have
Who
4
might
more
offer-
years. And we'll have
And we'll have 4 more years to offer her expertise in that area. Right, Janie?
That's right.
So, I do want to speak to this a little bit, that I think we can take the direction unless there's opposition from the council, and we want to take further discussion to whether or not we want to devote staff time to that. But I think it's a worthy opportunity for our community to look into. I think that Councilor Coleman's absolutely correct that we need to look at potential partnerships, the size of fairs that he's talking about comparing to aren't put on by municipalities, and
Right.
so there'd probably be a lot of external players to the city, but we'd be happy to start a conversation and try and coordinate with perhaps the county and with other area players that may be interested in seeing that kind of event in Muskogee, because I think as we think on a very big level, I think we need to also look for partners that can help us dream that big dream.
For me, I would like to have a motion directing staff to do that instead of just a consensus, if that would be all right with this.
I'll second that
committee.
motion if he'll make it.
That's my motion.
I have a motion and a second to direct staff to look into the possibilities of a state fair. Any other?
Or may I add, or a similar type event. I think a state fair is a specific thing, but something
Okay.
similar.
Or similar event.
So amended.
So amended. Any other discussion or comments? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 8.
Discuss and provide direction to staff on existing and future means and methods for repair of potholes.
Mr. Coleman.
I'm learning on the council that all you have to do to be popular is take one phone call about a pothole. And so rather than be popular, I'd rather see the city see what we can do to be certain that when we do have street repairs that need to be done, we do as much as we can to be certain we follow up, to be certain that we remove gravel and replace that gravel with either asphalt or concrete as appropriate at the time. And so I have been in discussions with the city manager about that to come up with a plan, and I'd like to turn this part of the conversation over to him so that he can explain to us what actually can be done.
Mr. Miller.
Yeah, certainly, and I'll defer to Mr. Riley here in a moment, but there are, of course, a lot of circumstances involving road repair that involve weather conditions, road conditions, and availability of materials. But what we found in some of our recent discussion is that there may be better internal processes we can implement to make sure that we're getting from step A to step Z as quickly and as efficiently as possible, to making sure that the repairs that we're doing in as timely a fashion as we can. We have had some of those discussions internally. I have asked Mr. Riley to kind of explain some of those issues that I brought up about timeliness and about our process and about materials and weather conditions as well, that all factor in.
Typically, when it's either a pothole or a street cut from a repair from water line or sewer line or other type of utilities. And what we do is we come back in with gravel initially, and then we come back later with the surface that's there. If it's concrete street, we put back concrete. If it's asphalt, we put back asphalt as a policy. There are situations in the wintertime where we can't get asphalt, so we may end up putting concrete to the surface in some areas. Or wait until we can get asphalt. So those issues we work through depending on the weather and the temperature. But what we are doing is we're compiling, we're changing the processes internally so that we are compiling lists now that we know where a pothole is on the list, and we will prioritize based on the type of street, arterial, collector, and residential, and then work through the list on the prioritization level, so that when someone calls, we know where that pothole stands on this list as to when we can give them a good idea of when the final repair will be done.
And that does address existing streets where gravel is now.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is a work in progress, but I think we've already made some good steps, and I think we're going to continue to do so.
Okay. No action necessary on this item? If I'm not mistaken. Seeing that no citizens signed up to speak to this committee, we're adjourned. Thank you all.